Sí se puede. Cafecito.
Welcome to Cafecito. We are here with a very special guest, activist, organizer, educator, the one and only Dolores Huerta. Welcome.
Hi, good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Can you talk to me a little bit about where you grew up? You were born in New Mexico, but you grew up in Stockton, and the farm worker community there and the values you learned, especially from your mother as a young girl.
Well, I think the values I learned from my mother were New Mexico values, actually, because she was a big devotee of St. Francis Xavier, and following the teachings of St. Francis of Assisi, that you have to help people when they're in need, to always not always think of material things. And in Stockton, it was a farm worker town. You might say a lot of people were very poor, but it really had an international flavor to it, just because of all of the many different countries that people came from.
Can you talk about when you first encountered Cesar Chavez and how you guys began the Great United Farm Workers Union?
Well, Cesar and I both came out of a community organization called Community Service Organization, but the one thing that we had in common was the issue of farm workers. And Cesar organized groups of farm workers down in the Oxnard area, which he turned over to another union, and then it fell apart. I organized a large group of farm workers in the Stockton area of California, and when I turned it over to another organization, another union, it fell apart. So at that point, she just said, we've got to do it ourselves.
Estamos dedicando este día el fruto de la unidad del campesino. Pero lo que estamos fincando aquí es una organización, una unidad para hacer los cambios sociales y económicos que necesitamos para ser hombres y mujeres libres. Y vamos a ver la victoria pronto, compañeros. Bueno, muchas gracias, compañeros, y que viva la causa.
Was there ever a tough time or a challenge? People weren't aware that they were using sexist or chauvinist language, and how were you able to deal with some of those challenges as a woman?
I had a lot of support from the farm workers, but there was a lot of machismo, and so I love to tell the story about we're in a meeting with all of the leadership, and Cesar would say at the end of the meeting, does anybody else have anything they want to add? And I said, because I had been taking a little piece of paper and putting a little pencil mark every time they said something machista or anything sexist. So at the end of the meeting, I said, well, I just want to let you know that you guys have made 58 sexist comments during this meeting. And so the next time they cut it down to 30 and then down to 20, and pretty soon they were down to 0. So it's not just in the Latino community. You might say that we have still a lot of institutionalized sexism in our country, just like we have a lot of institutionalized racism. So we have a long way to go yet.
But I think that what we do need is some federal legislation which will be comparable to the legislation that we passed in the 1930s for other workers in this country. And the fact is that we haven't done that, and the result has been that the farm workers have suffered.
It's a very exciting time. It looks like we're finally going to get a bill passed. What would make you happy in terms of immigration reform? What would make you feel victorious?
I would love to see an immigration bill that was as simple as the one we passed in 1986, which made it very easy for people to become residents and then immigrants. Once people from the cities and the urban areas, if they actually showed that they had 5 years of continuous residence in the United States and no criminal record, they could get their immigration status, right? And then they only had to wait 5 years to become citizens. And for the farm workers, it was even easier. All the farm workers had to prove is that they had worked 90 days for 3 consecutive years. And if they could show that, they could get the residence and only wait 5 years to become citizens. So anyway, I think the new laws that they're talking about are going to make it a lot harder for people to become citizens. And I think we have to go look back at the history of immigration in our country and know that every immigrant group that has come to the United States was able to access citizenship, and much easier than what they're trying to make it now. So we'll wait and see, but we're hoping that hopefully if our community really gets out there.
Do you think we'll see a Latino president soon?
Oh, absolutely. It's just a matter of time, yeah. And maybe a Latina president also.
Maybe a
Not just a Latino, but also a Latina, yeah.
The film Chavez is coming out, and I know you served as an advisor on the film. Are you excited about that? Are you looking forward to that film? What do you hope to see there? Watch for part 2 of our interview with Dolores Huerta as she discusses the movie Chavez, her foundation, and advice for young Latinos.